The alien warship Oblivion's grasp descended through Earth's atmosphere like a blade of judgment. The Zeldar Dominion, a technologically superior empire, had monitored Earth for decades, waiting for the right moment to claim the planet. Their intelligence had informed them that human civilization had collapsed due to an event referred to as the Necrotic Plague. What remained, they believed, were scattered remnants of a once great species, primitive, weak, and disorganized. Commander Veilrax, a hardened veteran of interstellar conquests, stood at the observation deck of his flagship. His golden exosuit shimmered under the artificial lights as he observed the world below. The blue and green jewel of a planet had turned sickly and gray, its cities covered in rot, its landmass scarred by fire and ruin. Pathetic, Veilrax muttered. They were once formidable, but now they are nothing. General Exorvan, his second-in-command, folded his forearms behind his back. His bioluminescent eyes pulsed with disdain. The last human transmissions we intercepted spoke of biological contamination. If their own weapons defeated them, Earth is already ours. With a simple gesture, Veilrax signaled for their ground forces to deploy. Legionnaires, towering biomechanical warriors, launched from the ship in precision strikes, their sleek, insectoid armor gleaming in the dim light of a dying sun. Hunter drones followed, scanning for any remaining human threats. The Zeldar expected little resistance. They were wrong. New York City, Zeldar Drop Zone Alpha. The alien troops secured their perimeter, their plasma weapons humming as they advanced through the ruins. The city, once a beacon of human progress, was a skeletal husk. Streets were filled with rusted cars, their drivers long turned to dust or something far worse. Blackened skyscrapers loomed over them, silent sentinels of a forgotten war. A scout unit moved ahead, their gravpikes scanning for signs of movement. The readings puzzled them. Life signs were erratic, numerous, yet lacking the heat signatures of living creatures. A Legionnaire, Unit K-12, approached the remains of a human soldier slumped against a wall, a rifle still clutched in skeletal fingers. Its glowing optics scanned the body. No heartbeat. No respiration. No threat detected. Then the corpse moved. A decayed hand lashed out, seizing the alien's wrist with unnatural strength. The thing that had once been a man released an ear-piercing screech. More emerged from the shadows, dozens, then hundreds. Hostile entities detected. Unit K-12's voice crackled through the comms. Initiating. The message cut off as the undead swarmed. Blaster fire erupted. Zeldar warriors fought with ruthless efficiency, their weapons disintegrating rotting flesh in bursts of plasma. But for every zombie they felled, 5 more took its place. Limbs blown off did nothing. Headshots worked, but the Zeldar aimed for vital organs, a mistake that proved fatal. Legionnaires were dragged to the ground, their screams lost beneath the gnashing teeth of the dead. Hunter drones fired from above, but the sheer weight of numbers was overwhelming. This is Drop Zone Alpha. We are compromised. A soldier's desperate voice crackled in Veilrax's earpiece. The enemy is AAGH. Silence. Aboard Oblivion's grasp. Veilrax watched the unfolding disaster, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. This wasn't a broken world of cowards and scavengers. This was a death trap. These creatures, Exorvan muttered, studying the grotesque footage, they are not human anymore. Veilrax clenched a fist. Deploy war beasts. Burn the infection from this planet. The Zeldar had conquered 1,000 worlds, crushed rebellions, eradicated entire civilizations. But they had never faced an enemy that did not fear, did not hesitate, did not die. As the order was given, the war that should never have happened had begun. The battlefield had become a massacre. What had begun as a straightforward planetary takeover had spiraled into a nightmare. The Zeldar Legionnaires, once an unstoppable force, were being ripped apart, not by an advanced enemy, but by corpses. The Oblivion's grasp hovered above New York's shattered skyline, its scanners relaying distress signals from the ground. Veilrax clenched his mandibles, watching the chaotic feeds from his remaining soldiers. He had lost 3 full battalions in under an hour. These creatures, these undead abominations, defied all logic. They do not think, yet they strategize, General Exorvan noted grimly. Observe the way they swarm in waves. They overwhelm our units before they can regroup. There is no hesitation, no fear. Valrax knew Exorvan was right. The enemy did not care for tactics, nor did it require rest or reinforcements. Every fallen Zeldar became one of them. The realization hit him like a shockwave. We need immediate quarantine protocols, Valrax barked. Seal all landing zones. Retrieve the wounded only after full biological scans. We do not know if the contagion. A scream crackled through the comms. Then another. Inside Drop Zone Beta, a secure outpost set up in an abandoned military base, a soldier collapsed. His chitinous armor twitched as he convulsed violently. His squad mates rushed forward, their plasma rifles raised. Hold him down, one of them yelled. The infected soldier let out a sickening shriek, his bioluminescent veins turning black as his golden eyes dimmed into lifeless voids. His mandibles gnashed hungrily, and in an instant, he lunged. The transformation had been almost instantaneous. The outpost descended into chaos as more Zeldar fell to the infection. Some tore off their helmets, clawing at their faces as the virus took hold. Others screamed as their bodies twisted, their limbs snapping at unnatural angles before they joined the ranks of the undead. The virus was no longer a human problem. It had adapted. Aboard the Oblivion's grasp. Valrax watched in horror as his own warriors turned into monstrosities before his eyes. Their exoskeletons had become brittle, decayed yet unbreakable, their movements eerily faster than human zombies. This is worse than we imagined, Exorvan whispered, his usual stoic demeanor faltering. This infection, it is not just biological. It is something else. Valrax turned sharply. Explain. Exorvan hesitated. The virus does not just kill its host. It repurposes them. Our genetic makeup is superior to that of humans, yet the transformation occurs within minutes, faster than any natural disease should allow. Valrax's blood ran cold. Are you saying this virus is intelligent? Exorvan nodded slowly. Or something is controlling it. Silence filled the command deck. The implications were terrifying. If the virus learned, if it evolved, then nothing in the galaxy was safe. We need to burn this planet down, Valrax declared. Earth is lost. But before he could issue the command, alarms blared through the ship. A distress signal flashed on the screen. Deck 7, Containment Bay. Something had gotten inside. Containment Bay, Deck 7. The 2 Zeldar guards stood rigid at the bay entrance, gripping their grav pikes. Inside, through the reinforced glass, one of their own was restrained on an operating table. The soldier had been recovered from Drop Zone Beta. He had shown no signs of infection, yet they had locked him in quarantine as a precaution. Vitals are stable, one of the guards muttered, glancing at the monitor. He hasn't turned. Then, with terrifying speed, the soldier's eyes snapped open. The lights in the bay flickered. The restrained warrior let out a low, guttural growl that reverberated through the room. Frost spread across the glass. What the? The soldier tore through the restraints. One of the guards barely had time to react before the infected Zeldar moved faster than anything they had ever seen. It leaped, slamming into him with bone-crushing force. The second guard fired, plasma rounds searing through flesh. But the thing did not stop. It didn't even flinch. Within seconds, both guards were dead. And the infection had made its way into the heart of the ship. Aboard the command deck. Valrax's comlink crackled. Deck 7 has been breached. The infection has, GAH. The transmission cut out. Panic rippled through the command staff. We need to purge the entire deck, Exorvan said urgently. Lock it down before. The doors at the far end of the command deck hissed open. A single Zeldar officer stumbled inside. His armor was shattered. His breathing was ragged. He lifted his head, but his eyes were dead. The first to turn aboard the ship had arrived. Veilrax grabbed his plasma scythe and activated it. No survivors. The infected officer lunged. Its once proud Zeldar body twisted into something grotesque. Its elongated limbs jerked unnaturally, mandibles snapping wildly. Veilrax reacted with the speed of a warrior who had fought 1,000 battles. His plasma scythe cut a glowing arc through the air, slicing through the creature's torso. The undead Zeldar screeched, a sound more primal than anything Veilrax had ever heard, but it did not stop. Before the commander could react, the abomination pounced again. A shot rang out. A bolt of dark energy struck the infected officer in the skull, sending its decayed body flying backward. It twitched violently before going still, the glow in its eyes fading. General Exorvan stood behind Veilrax, his disruptor pistol still aimed at the corpse. His bioluminescent eyes flickered with a rare show of concern. "This is worse than we imagined," Exorvan muttered. "We cannot allow the infection to spread any further." Veilrax rose to his full height. He knew Exorvan was right. If the infection reached the core systems of the ship, it would be the end of them all. "Seal off Deck 7, Veilrax commanded. Any life signs detected there must be purged immediately." The bridge crew scrambled to obey, but the damage had already been done. Reports flooded in from other sections of the Oblivion's grasp. More Zeldar were turning. The infection was spreading at an unnatural rate. "Sir," one of the technicians called out. "We're detecting movement on Deck 5 and Deck 6. Security forces are already engaged, but," the alien hesitated. "It's spreading too fast." Veilrax clenched his fists. He had led armies against planetary rebellions. He had crushed entire civilizations. But nothing had prepared him for a war against the dead. He turned to Exorvan. "How do we stop this?" Exorvan exhaled slowly, his mandibles clicking in thought. "We need to find the source of this infection. If this is a weapon, then it must have a creator." Veilrax narrowed his gaze. "You think this disease was engineered?" Exorvan's expression darkened. "I do not believe in coincidence, Commander." Meanwhile, on the surface, remnants of humanity. While the Zeldar forces fought for survival aboard their flagship, a small group of human survivors watched from the ruins below. They had seen the alien war machines descend from the sky, expecting the worst. But what they witnessed instead was something unexpected. The invaders were being slaughtered just as easily as humanity had been. Commander Ethan Cole, a former U.S. Marine, peered through a pair of scavenged binoculars. His dark, weathered face twisted into an expression of grim amusement. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "Looks like the aliens bit off more than they could chew." Beside him, Dr. Emily Carter, a virologist who had survived the initial outbreak, adjusted her cracked glasses. "This changes things," she said softly. "If they're struggling, it means they don't have a cure either." Cole lowered the binoculars. "And that means we might be able to use them." Dr. Carter gave him a wary glance. "Use them?" Cole smirked. "They've got weapons. Technology. If we can make contact, we might just convince them that they need us." The scientist crossed her arms. "And if they decide to wipe us out instead?" Cole shrugged. "Then we're already dead." He turned to his small team of survivors, barely a dozen strong. They had spent months dodging both zombies and raiders, surviving on scraps and sheer determination. Now, for the first time in a long time, they had a plan. "Let's move," Cole ordered. "We're going to find out if these aliens are friend or foe." As they disappeared into the ruins, none of them realized just how high the stakes had become. The war was far from over. The ruins of New York were eerily quiet. Too quiet. Commander Ethan Cole and his team of survivors moved carefully through the wreckage of what had once been a bustling metropolis. The once proud city was now nothing more than a graveyard of the past. Cars rusted in place, buildings stood hollowed out by fires, and the streets were littered with rotting corpses, some human, some alien. "We're close," Dr. Emily Carter whispered, pointing ahead. "The alien landing zone should be just past this intersection." Cole raised his fist, signaling the group to halt. He crouched behind a burnout truck, bringing his rifle up. "Keep your eyes open," he muttered. "We don't know if the aliens shoot first and ask questions later." A former police officer, Jacob Reed, tightened his grip on his shotgun. "I still don't like this. You really think the invaders are gonna help us?" Cole glanced at him. "You see another way off this dying rock?" Reed sighed but didn't argue. The truth was, Earth was lost. The outbreak had already consumed every major city, and with the aliens failing to contain it, the planet was turning into one giant death trap. The only way out was up. As they reached the alien outpost, they found themselves standing before a massive drop ship, its sleek, black metal covered in dried blood. Zeldar corpses littered the area, their armor shredded by clawed hands and bite marks. Cole grimaced. "Looks like they didn't fare much better than us." Then, from the shadows of a ruined building, movement. Everyone froze. A lone Zeldar soldier stepped forward, plasma rifle raised. Its deep violet carapace was smeared with dark blood, its body riddled with scratches. It was wounded, but still standing. Cole slowly lifted his hands, motioning for the others to hold their fire. The alien's mandibles clicked. Its glowing yellow eyes studied the humans with suspicion. Dr. Carter stepped forward cautiously. "We're not your enemy," she said carefully. "We want to help." The Zeldar tilted its head, considering her words. Then, to their shock, it spoke in perfect English. "You are not infected?" Cole lowered his weapon slightly. "Not yet," he said. "But if we stay on this planet much longer, we all will be." The alien exhaled, its muscular arms trembling from exhaustion. "Then you understand, this world is doomed." Dr. Carter nodded. "Not if we work together." The Zeldar studied them for a long moment before finally lowering its weapon. "My name is Tarnak Va," the alien said. "And if you wish to survive, follow me." Aboard the Oblivion's Grasp, a losing battle. Veilrax stood on the command deck, staring at the tactical display. Red markers flooded the ship's schematic. Decks 5 through 8 were completely overrun. The infection was moving faster than expected. Entire squads were disappearing within minutes, their comms going silent. Some had managed to report strange behavior from the infected, faster movements, coordinated attacks, even whispers in the dark, before they too fell. Exorvan clenched his fists. "We have already lost a third of the ship. If we do not act now, we will lose the rest." Veilrax's mandibles tightened. The Zeldar Empire had never faced anything like this before. They had conquered countless planets, destroyed civilizations that had resisted their rule, but this? This was not war. This was something else. He turned to the remaining crew. "Prepare an emergency distress beacon. We must warn the fleet, this infection is unlike anything in the known galaxy." A nearby officer hesitated. "Commander, we have a problem." Veilrax's gaze hardened. "What now?" The officer's mandibles twitched nervously. "The infected, they are adapting." On the main screen, security footage played. A group of Zeldar zombies shambled through the corridors, but something was off. They weren't moving like the mindless creatures they had fought before. Their heads twitched unnaturally, their bodies convulsing in sync. Then, as if commanded by an invisible force, they all turned at once, staring directly into the security cameras. And they smiled. A chill ran through Veilrax's body. "They're learning," Exorvan whispered. "Something, or someone, is controlling them." The realization hit Veilrax like a plasma blast. This wasn't just a virus. This was a sentient force. And it wanted them all dead. The infected Zeldar on the security feed weren't just moving, they were thinking. Veilrax's mandibles tightened as he watched them tilt their heads in eerie unison, their lifeless eyes gleaming with something far worse than hunger. Awareness. They're staring directly into the cameras, Exorvan muttered, his normally composed voice laced with unease. Then, as if responding to the general's words, the infected creatures suddenly grinned, a grotesque, unnatural imitation of sentience. Veilrax didn't hesitate. "Shut down all internal security feeds," he barked. "They're watching us." A technician scrambled to comply, his claws flying across the control panel. One by one, the monitors blinked into darkness. But it was too late. A chilling, inhuman voice rasped through the ship's comms, low, guttural, yet unmistakably intelligent. "Why, run." The crew froze. Exorvan's eyes widened. That came through our encrypted channels. Veilrax's blood turned cold. The infected were communicating. The voice returned, distorted yet dripping with malicious amusement. "We are not the plague. We are the evolution." Then the lights flickered, not just on the command deck, but across the entire Oblivion's grasp. The infection had breached the ship's systems. "We've been compromised," the technician cried out. "The central AI is under attack." A tremor rocked the ship. A new signal had activated, one coming from deep within the infected zones. Veilrax turned sharply. "Where's that transmission coming from?" The officer paled. "Sir, it's originating from the core of Deck 8. Exorvan's voice was grim. "That's the first section that fell." Veilrax clenched his fists. "Then that's where we strike. Arm the remaining squads. We're cutting our way through." If something down there was controlling the infection, they needed to destroy it. Now. Meanwhile, on the surface, Tarnak VA, the wounded Zeldar soldier, led Commander Ethan Cole and his team into the ruined alien outpost. Inside, it was clear that the Zeldar had suffered just as much as humanity. Bloodied armor lay discarded, shattered weapons scattered across the floor. The walls were scorched from plasma burns, a last stand against an enemy that did not die. Tarnak VA collapsed against a console, breathing heavily. His alien blood, a thick violet fluid, oozed from a deep gash in his exoskeleton. Cole crouched beside him. "We need you alive, buddy." Dr. Emily Carter quickly scanned him with a rudimentary medical device. "His vitals are weak, but he's stable, for now." Tarnak VA exhaled sharply, his mandibles twitching. "You do not understand. This plague is not natural." Cole exchanged a look with Dr. Carter. "We figured that much out. The dead shouldn't be coordinating." Tarnak VA's glowing eyes flickered. "Because they are being commanded." A chill ran through the room. "What do you mean, commanded?" Carter asked. The alien hesitated. "The infection, it spreads through biological matter. But it also infects energy." Cole's brow furrowed. "That's impossible." Tarnak VA's mandibles clicked in frustration. "And yet, here we are." Dr. Carter's mind raced. If this virus could infect energy itself, then it wasn't just a biological plague, it was a sentient force capable of corrupting anything it touched. Cole clenched his jaw. "So, what's controlling them? A hive mind?" Tarnak VA shook his head. "No. A hive mind merely reacts to threats. This force, it is calculating. It is strategic. And worst of all," his voice lowered, "it is spreading beyond this world." Silence fell over the group. Cole was the first to speak. "You're telling me this thing is intelligent enough to escape Earth?" Tarnak VA nodded. "And if we do not stop it, it will consume the stars themselves." Cole let out a slow breath. "Well, shit." Dr. Carter turned to him. "We need a way to contain this thing. Maybe even find a cure." Tarnak VA grimaced. "There is no cure." Cole cracked his knuckles. "Then we need to kill it at the source." Tarnak VA hesitated before pointing at the sky. "Then we must reach the Oblivion's grasp." Cole and Carter shared a look. If the alien flagship was still operational, it might be their only chance to stop the infection at its core. But first, they had to survive long enough to get there. Let's move, Cole said. We're stealing ourselves a spaceship. Back on the Oblivion's grasp, descend into hell. Veilrax led a team of elite warriors down to Deck 8, the heart of the infection. The corridors were barely recognizable, thick black veins pulsed along the walls, twitching as if alive. The air was heavy with a sickly sweet stench, rot, decay, and something far worse. Exorvan raised his plasma rifle. Stay sharp. Whatever we're about to face, it knows we're coming. They moved forward carefully, stepping over the corpses of fallen Zeldar. Some of the bodies twitched, but they did not rise. Not yet. Then, the whispering began. Soft, inhuman voices slithered through the air, mocking, taunting. You are too late. Veilrax's grip tightened on his plasma scythe. Keep moving. The deeper they went, the louder the voices became, until they finally reached the core chamber. And there it was. A mass of writhing black tendrils pulsated at the center of the room, wrapped around the ship's neural core. The infection had hijacked their systems, spreading like a living parasite. And at the center of it all, a twisted, towering figure loomed, once Zeldar, now something else. Its armor was fused with the infection, its body pulsating with unnatural energy. The moment it sensed them, its milky white eyes snapped open. You cannot stop the inevitable, it rasped. Veilrax didn't hesitate. Open fire. Plasma rounds tore through the air, striking the abomination. But it did not fall. Instead, it raised a massive, clawed hand, and the shadows themselves rose to attack. Veilrax realized with a sinking feeling that they weren't just fighting a monster. They were fighting a god in the making. The infected Zeldar officer twitched, his elongated mandibles stretching into an unnatural grin. His dead, yellowed eyes gleamed with an intelligence that should not have been there. We told you, this world belongs to us, the creature rasped. Veilrax's fingers curled around the hilt of his plasma scythe. This thing, whatever it was not Zeldar anymore. Exorvan stepped forward cautiously. Who are you? The infected officer's body convulsed, his cracked exoskeleton shifting with wet, sickening snaps. We are many. His mouth twisted. We were created, abandoned, and left to rot. A chill ran through Veilrax. Created? Before he could press further, the infected officer lunged. Veilrax moved instinctively, his plasma scythe slicing through the abomination's torso. It collapsed, limbs twitching, but before it died, it uttered one final whisper. You will all join us soon. Then it went still. Silence filled the command deck. Exorvan exhaled, stepping toward the corpse. This is not a disease, he muttered. This is a message. Veilrax turned to his crew. We need to find out who made this, and destroy them before it spreads beyond this system. But deep down, he knew. They were already too late. On the surface, the secret buried underground. Tarnak VA stood before the holographic display, his bioluminescent eyes narrowing at the data scrolling across the screen. The virus had a pattern. A trajectory. It didn't just spread, it followed something. Dr. Carter, still staring at the map, shook her head in disbelief. It's leading to a specific location. She turned to Tarnak VA. Your people fought wars across the stars, right? You've seen countless civilizations. Have you ever encountered something like this before? Tarnak VA hesitated. Then, in a voice that was almost haunted, he spoke. Only once. The room fell silent. Cole narrowed his eyes. Explain. Tarnak VA's mandibles clicked softly. Long ago, the Zeldar Empire waged war against a species known as the Zifferans. They were brilliant scientists, but reckless. His voice darkened. They created something they could not control. Dr. Carter paled. A biological weapon. Tarnak VA nodded. It wiped out their entire species. Cole folded his arms. And let me guess, your people tried to contain it. Tarnak VA exhaled. We buried it. The realization hit them all at once. Dr. Carter turned back to the display, her fingers zooming in on the virus's path. It was heading toward a specific point on Earth, deep beneath the ruins of an old government facility. The place where the Zeldar had once buried their mistake. Cole's face hardened. We need to get there, before it wakes up whatever's inside. Tarnok-VA's voice was grim. Then we must move fast. Outside, in the darkness of the ruined city, something watched them. And it was already waiting. The wind howled through the ruined streets as Cole, Dr. Carter, Tarnok-VA, and the remaining soldiers pushed forward toward the underground facility. Their boots crunched over charred bones and shattered glass, remnants of battles fought by both humans and Zeldar. The virus had left nothing untouched. Cole checked his rifle, keeping his voice low. How deep is this place buried? Tarnok-VA, his injuries barely holding, let out a raspy breath. Far beneath the earth. We made sure of it. Dr. Carter shot him a glare. Yeah, great job. Look how well that turned out. Tarnok-VA didn't argue. He knew they had failed. The Zifferin bioweapon, the one his ancestors had tried to erase from history, was awake. And it was calling to the infected. Beneath the surface, the vault opens. They reached the entrance of the bunker, a massive reinforced hatch, its metal surface covered in alien markings. This is it, Tarnok-VA murmured. Cole took point, signaling his men to cover the perimeter. How do we get inside? Tarnok-VA stepped forward, placing his clawed hand over the controls. His eyes glowed dimly, scanning the ancient biometric lock. The door hissed, gears grinding from centuries of inactivity. Then, it lurched open. A rush of stale air escaped from the dark depths below. And something else. A sound, distant and unnatural, echoed from within, a chittering, gurgling noise that sent a shiver down their spines. Dr. Carter swallowed hard. I really don't like that. Cole flicked on his rifle's light. Too late to back out now. Let's move. One by one, they descended into the abyss. Inside the tomb of the Zifferins. The bunker was vast, a decayed labyrinth of dead consoles, shattered containment units, and skeletal remains. Some were human. Others were not. Tarnok-VA stepped carefully, his eyes scanning the alien glyphs along the walls. This was a Zifferin research base, he muttered. This is where they tried to control their creation. Cole's voice was tight. Did they succeed? Tarnok-VA's mandibles twitched. What do you think? Dr. Carter approached a broken stasis pod, her flashlight tracing over the black, vein-like growths that had consumed it. Her fingers brushed the worn control panel, and the screen flickered to life. A holographic recording played. A Zifferin scientist, its elongated, insectoid features twisted in terror, appeared. We made a mistake. It is not a disease. It is a being. It learns. It adapts. It hates. The recording glitched, the scientist's eyes wide with desperation. If you are watching this, run. Then the screen went black. A slow, chilling growl rumbled from the shadows. Cole barely had time to raise his rifle before something massive moved in the darkness. The creature in the dark. A towering figure emerged, its body a shifting mass of biological and technological corruption. Tendrils pulsed with unnatural energy, eyes forming and disappearing across its formless skin. It wasn't just a monster. It was the source. Tarnok-VA froze, his voice barely a whisper. It's aware. The creature tilted its head, focusing on them. Then it spoke. Not in words, but directly into their minds. We were left to die. Now, all will join us. The bunker shook violently, and the walls split open. From the shadows, hundreds of infected surged forward, human, Zeldar, and things far worse. Cole clenched his jaw. Here we go. Then the horde attacked. Meanwhile, a desperate battle in space. On the Oblivion's grasp, Veilrax and his warriors fought tooth and claw against the growing infection. The corrupted ship's systems were failing, and the abomination controlling it was gaining strength. Xorvan reloaded his weapon, breathing heavily. We can't hold much longer. Veilrax knew they had one option left. We're crashing the ship. Xorvan's eyes widened. That's suicide. Veilrax activated the ship's emergency override. If that thing reaches deep space, it will spread beyond control. We either end it here, or we doom the galaxy. Xorvan hesitated. Then, with a grim nod, he activated the self-destruct sequence. The ship's AI, barely functioning, crackled to life. Warning, catastrophic systems failure detected. Impact imminent. The Oblivion's grasp turned toward Earth, its thrusters failing, its infected corridors collapsing. Veilrax gave one final transmission. To all survivors, brace for impact. Then, as flames engulfed the ship, the Zeldar flagship plummeted toward the planet, straight toward the underground facility. Beneath the Earth, the final stand. The bunker shook violently, debris crashing from the ceiling as the monstrous horde surged forward. Cole fired first, his rifle's muzzle flashing in the dark. Hold the line. Dr. Carter ducked behind a fallen console, scrambling to reload her pistol. Tarnak VA swung his energy blade, cleaving through the corrupted abominations that once resembled Zeldar warriors. And at the heart of it all, the entity, the intelligence behind the infection, watched them. Futile, its voice whispered in their minds. You cannot fight what has already won. The ground trembled, and suddenly, something massive tore through the ceiling. A flaming warship, tumbling from orbit. Cole's eyes widened. What the hell? It was Veilrax's ship, the Oblivion's grasp, now a burning wreck plummeting toward their location. Tarnak VA's mandibles twitched in realization. He's crashing it on purpose. Cole's face twisted. That crazy son of a... Then the impact hit. The entire bunker exploded in fire and rubble, the warship slamming through layers of earth and crashing directly into the buried Zifferin vault. The shockwave hurled Cole, Carter, and Tarnak VA across the room. Flames erupted, consuming the infected hordes in a firestorm of destruction. For a moment, there was only chaos. Then, silence. The entity's last words. Through the flames and debris, Cole stirred, coughing as he pushed himself up. Dr. Carter groaned, struggling to her feet. Did we win? Tarnak VA rose shakily, his armor scorched. I do not know. Then they heard it. The entity's voice, weak but still lingering. You think this is victory? It whispered. Cole raised his weapon, but he knew there was no stopping the voice. We were forgotten. We will never be forgotten again. Then, with a final, haunting shriek, the entity's presence faded into nothingness. And the infection was gone. On the surface, a ruined world. Hours later, Cole, Carter, and Tarnak VA emerged from the wreckage. The sky above was blackened with smoke, the remains of Oblivion's grasp still smoldering. Bodies, human, alien, infected, littered the ground. Carter exhaled. So, is it over? Tarnak VA stared at the wreckage, his expression unreadable. The entity is dead. The infection is gone. Cole looked at the burning horizon, his grip tightening on his rifle. But at what cost? The world had survived. But barely. Epilogue, the last transmission. Days later, as the survivors regrouped, a faint signal crackled over long-range comms. A message. From deep space. Cole listened, his blood running cold as the final words played over the radio. We are not the only ones. We were only the first. The transmission cut out. Cole looked at Tarnak VA. Tell me you don't know what that means. Tarnak VA's mandibles clicked. I wish I could. In the distance, beyond the ruined cities and the smoldering wreckage of a war that never should have happened, something moved in the stars. Watching. Waiting. Preparing. Because this was only the beginning. The end.